Challenges with teams like Buffalo over the course of the last couple seasons, but one team that you've got the good record against and you've played well against is Calgary. Are there certain intrinsic reasons why you've had that kind of success? Is it an easier game for your group to get motivated? What exactly is it that's giving you this kind
of? Let's make sure we understand. We have our challenges with Calgary. They're a great team. They're competitive. I think they've improved throughout the year, made changes to their roster, and they present big challenges for our group. It's never easy. We've been able to scrape wins out, sometimes playing well, sometimes coming from behind. So that's been a fortunate thing for us. But when you play your rival, your provincial rival, you tend to, or you should be excited, and the palm should be a little sweatier than normal, and it should be a great game. It always is between the two teams, and it's usually a lot of fun to be involved in those games from a player perspective and from a fan perspective.
Todd, when it comes to the last game, do you kind of forget it and put in a good effort today? And if you get the result, people are talking about winning 4 of the last 5 as opposed to the game in Buffalo. Is that how you guys approach it, or do you try and take as many lessons?
It's tough to forget it. It lingers, but we've got to move on, and we've got to get prepared to play, as I mentioned, against a team that's, I think they got points in 10 straight games. So they're playing and firing on all cylinders, and it's tough to forget that taste that's in our mouth right now, and sometimes you may want to carry that over and use it as a driver or a motivating factor as well.
Todd, lineup changes. Might you play 7 defensemen?
There's a chance that we could do that. We'll see as the day goes on.
Just wondering about Oscar Klefbom and where you think his all-around game is. Not just the point production, which is down, but the all-around game, and what you think he can do the rest of the season to try and recapture what he had last year.
Well, with Clef, you've got to establish what the top and bottom is, and then you've got to slot him where he is right now. And I would say during the season, he dipped past that midway point, and he slowly, as he's got healthier, is elevating his game above that midway point. But the point where he's at now on the ceiling is a gap that he still has to close.
Todd, we'll assume you don't go in front of 20 NHL players and say, hey, let's compete tonight. But there's been a definite issue here at home, certainly since Christmas, beaten 5-0 3 times. How does a coach go about making sure he gets the team that skates and competes and tries and plays hard as opposed to the team we've seen certainly on those 3 nights?
Well, it's happened 3 nights since Christmas, so the approach that we've used exactly the answer to the question. I think that you guys have actually made my job a little bit easier, through the media and pointing out the lack of drive and will. Players hear that. We can all say, hey, we turn it off. We hear it whether we're reading or listening or not. We hear that, and we feel it. That should be motivation enough. Our rival should bring some of that out. Our self-pride, as I mentioned, we put our names on the backs of our jerseys too, and we represent our families and our loved ones. And I know when my dad calls me, he asks me what the hell is going on and what am I doing? And I have to accept that responsibility. And he's making sure that I'm working and giving an honest effort, and I'm sure that's happening out throughout. So we get a lot of external motivators as well as the internal one. We'll present a game plan. We'll try and repair the areas that we need to, and we'll play a game. And I believe our group can come and play hard.
Connor's kind of a leader of few words. He doesn't say a lot. He's very careful and selective with what he says. After last game, he was very blunt and just said, sometimes we're just not ready to go, and said starts with himself. And are you sensing that he's becoming more comfortable and as a guy who can maybe be a little bit more vocal? I know you can't just ask guys to be what they're not, but have you noticed him becoming a little bit more comfortable maybe saying things that he was a year ago?
We do this. We talk and we share thoughts and ideas, and you do it with the players. You're standing in the room and you do it there. What you don't see is what happens behind closed doors. And, true leadership doesn't happen here. It doesn't happen when they're talking to you guys with a microphone in their face, a little bit. But the strong leadership happens in the locker room between periods, after games, on the bench, practices, that type of stuff. And, you know, Connor's providing that. I don't question that one bit.
Todd, with 12 points and 5 teams between the Oilers and a playoff spot, is there still belief that you guys can get back in the race? And if so, how do you approach doing that?
Well, there is belief until it's completely taken away from. There's belief, but it's not a discussion point on our behalf when we get into the locker room. It's about fixing our game and getting played the right way. You know, playoffs are a pipe dream if we play like we play against Buffalo. We have to play extremely well for an extended period of time. You know, that's the reality of it. The extended period of time is secondary. The playing well comes first. And that's what we're striving for. So forget about the playoff talk on our behalf anyhow in the locker room. It doesn't happen. It's about playing right and competing and getting our game up to where it needs to be. And then we'll extend it out. And if things happen our way, we'll begin to talk about it.
Todd, you mentioned the possibility of 7 defensemen tonight. With Brandon Davidson, how do you see him handling that spot where, you know, he might play a couple games and then sit out a little bit, because that can obviously be tough for players sometimes, not knowing whether he's in or out, even if he plays well?
It's tough for players, but Brandon has been that role player basically throughout his NHL career. He's been a pinch hitter. He's been able to play in the 5-6 spot consistently for a little while, but sometimes he goes out. You know, players are paid and trained that way to come off the bench in a lot of sports, and they have to be able to provide a punch or, you know, a lift. And if they do that, then the team will be successful, the individual will be successful.
Just want to know, a lot of different line combinations this year, sometimes game to game. Where are you with the combinations that you tried? For a lack of a better term, is it grasping at straws right now to find that right combination to see if it clicks? Because it seems to be a lot of...
It's not grasping at straws by any means. It's not what we do. We put a lot of thought and effort into it. We try and keep some pairs together. When we got back up and running after our Christmas letdown, we had Leon back up on the wing, and we were able to run Nuge. Obviously, Leon isn't there anymore, so that changes things. You know, so it varies from night to night, and you know, when you're watching what you're watching against Buffalo the other night, you can't just stand there and keep, hey, next. You start to send messages, you start to find combinations, you look for at least 2 lines that are up and running, and you hope that you can overplay them. But when the whole group isn't going well, you're gambling. Okay.